And the thing that's really interesting about using overlords to create creep is because you tend to have a lot of overlords around your base in Starcraft. So when you bring in a lot of overlords, you can create a whole bunch of creep. So you can see with just a few overlords, you can basically cover an entire screen area with creep. But of course the question is, what can you do with all this creep? Well, the first unit that I'm going to show you that utilizes creep in interesting ways is the Nidus Worm. The Nidus Worm is also one of our different transport mechanics in the game. In the original Starcraft, we had the concept of Nidus Canals. But Nidus Canals weren't real usable in the first Starcraft, so we really wanted to come up with some improvements to it and really make it a viable transport mechanic in the game. So what you can do with the Nidus Worms is they can be created anywhere that there's creep, and you can have as many canals as you want. And the thing that's a lot better in the original Starcraft is that they're all interconnected. So you can take your units and put them inside of a Nidus canal, and they just sit underground, and they can come out any exit, which makes for a very powerful transport mechanic, because it means, unlike the other races, you actually don't have to risk your units in transports. So if the enemy player takes out your Nidus canal, or Nidus Worm, then all you lose is the exit. You don't actually lose the units that are underground, so you still have the opportunity to have them exit a totally different exit. Now, on the other hand, though, there are some disadvantages. It's much more expensive to create Nidus Worms, and they are limited to creep, so it's much tougher to make small drops. But on the other hand, when the Zerg does do a drop, it's a complete Zerg invasion. So now you can kind of see how you can use overlords together to make creep, and then create a Nidus Worm, and then to invade a Terran base. So you can see it's not too difficult for the Zerg to basically invade a base with their entire army. Now I'm going to show you a different example. This example is a little bit trickier use of creep and Nidus Worms. In this particular example, the Zerg player is actually going to create two different areas of Nidus Worm invasions. And this is going to force the Protoss player to decide which one they're going to attack. See, once again, the two overlords come in the two different spots. The Nidus Worms go down. And here comes the Zerg. Now, the Protoss player has a decision to make. He has two different invasion points and two bases. So he has to go and attack one of the forces. And at that point, the Zerg player decides where the Zerglings are going to come out. If the Protoss player had come over to this side, then the Zerg player could have attacked through the other side. Even though the Protoss player is able to ultimately push back the Zerg, they lost their entire base to it. Alright, so another way that you can use creep in an interesting way is through the crawler buildings. So there's two types of crawlers. There's spine crawlers and there's spore crawlers. And the thing that's really interesting about these buildings, they're much like the sunken colony and the spore colonies of Starcraft 1, but with a twist. These buildings can actually get up and move around, but they only can move around on creep, and they only can plant on creep. So the thing that they become a very useful base defense and really gives you a reason why you want to spread creep all around the map, because it gives you a lot more flexibility and really makes it, when you invade a Zerg base as another player, a pretty scary place to be, because you may see an open patch of creep, but it may not be open for very long. So I'm going to show you an example. So this first example is going to show how the Zerg base is in a pretty open area, but with the use of overlords, the overlords can spread the creep out to a choke point in the map. And then the spine crawlers get up and can move into the choke point, which is a much easier place to defend.
By the numbers, boys.
Okay, so in this other example, you can see Banshees coming in from the other side of the base, trying to trick the Zerg player, and attacking from an area where there's no anti-air defense. And you can see on the top part of the base, the spore crawlers get up and move down to where the Banshees are to defend that part of the Zerg base. So you can kind of see, we really want to make the Zerg that much more icky and really make it feel like when you're attacking a Zerg base that it's alive. So, we really felt like adding all these new mechanics to the creep was a great way to do it. But there's another example I want to use too. So one of the big new units that's actually kind of an old unit from the original Starcraft is the Queen. But the Queen is not the little weak flying unit that she was in the first game. And this one, she is really your base defender. So you only get one Queen, but the Queen is a very powerful part of your base defense. She's got a lot of different abilities. All of her abilities, though, require creep. Again, kind of hitting on the aspect of really trying to make you want to use the creep, spread the creep, and because it does make your units much more powerful. So she has the ability of transfusion, which allows you to heal buildings. So I'm going to show an example of that in a second. She also has the deep tunnel ability, which allows her to teleport to any of the Zerg buildings. So it makes her really responsive to any base attacks. She can kind of move around the different areas and heal buildings. And then her last ability, or her last active ability, is the Swarm Infestation, which allows her to turn any building into an attacking unit. And then lastly, she has a Mutant Larva ability, which allows her to create these mutant larvae that can instantly make units. So it's a very time-consuming process up front, but it allows you to be very responsive to attacks. If someone comes in with a unit, you instantly need a counter. So this movie is going to end up showing all of her abilities.
By the numbers, boys.
So you can see the Terrans are coming into attack. And there's a bunch of spine crawlers defending. And normally these spine crawlers would not be able to push back the Terrans by themselves. But the Queen kind of comes into action and makes sure to keep the spine crawlers healed up. And then now these Zerg are getting attacked from a totally opposite side of the base. from Reapers jumping up. But the Queen has the deep tunneling ability and can respond very quickly to this attack. And then turn the buildings around her into attacking units. And is able to push back the Reaper attack pretty much single-handedly. So another Zerg unit that I'm going to show you is the Zerg Corruptor. And this is going to kind of hit on another theme that we've really been trying to do with Starcraft 2. Really want to make the units themselves fairly easy to use, but there really be a lot of interesting targeting choices with how you use them. So the Zerg Corruptor is a great example of this. So the Corruptor is an anti-air unit, and when it defeats another air unit, it actually turns it into an infested unit that attacks, which really adds a lot of strategy to how you try to take on a force of corruptors. So these battle cruisers coming in and try and take out the corruptors, but the corruptors very quickly infest one of the battle cruisers, which then turns into an attack unit. So at this point, the player really has three options. Do they take out the battle cruiser that's now their enemy? Do they continue to try to attack the corruptors, or do they flee? So you can see the Corruptor is an extremely powerful anti-air unit that was able to take out a very powerful Terran force. Okay, the next Zerg unit I'm going to show you is called the Baneling. The Baneling is a unit that destructs itself and does damage to units around it. So much like the Sapper unit from Warcraft 2 or the Infested Terran from Starcraft. So the Baneling is best used when you use it in ambushes, which is really good for the Zerg because Banelings have the ability to burrow. So the movie I'm going to show you, you're going to see some burrowed Banelings and then some other Banelings that are hidden behind some trees. So they're really the best in that way because they don't really have a lot of hit points. So you just come onto a bunch of units without any sort of ambush, they get taken out very easily. Here we go. So you can see the burrowed units there that the Marines are walking across, that they don't know that the Banelings are there. And you can see it's quite effective. So the Marines think they're okay now, and they continue to advance, but they don't see the Banelings that come up the cameras because they're on high ground. And there they all go. Alright, so now I'm going to move on to the Protoss. So one of the big themes for the Protoss is that since the theme for the Protoss is less units numerically than the other two races, but the units they do have are much more powerful. So kind of the different ways that you use the different psionic abilities in the game is through things like battle control, and you're going to see a couple different spells like we don't have anti-grav today, but I am going to show you the force field, which allows you to kind of control the battlefield in interesting ways. And, you know, we're also, of course, going to have high damage spells like Psystorm return. So the first unit I'm going to show you is the Nullifier. The Nullifier is a early game caster unit. You know, one of the things from the original Starcraft is all the casting units were, you know, kind of mid to late game. So we thought it'd be a great opportunity in Starcraft 2 to add an earlier game casting unit because in the early game you really have a lot more time to micro your units. So the Nullifier is a really cool little spellcaster. And the ability that I'm going to show you is Force Field, which is a really interesting tactical spell because you can pretty much control the battle with them, you know, depending on what units you use with it. So you can see a kind of a mixed Protoss force. and Zerg are going to come across this area. But the Nullifier casts these force fields and force the Zerglings to channel into kind of a self-created choke point, which you can see most of the Zerglings now can't even get into the battle, which allows the Protoss pretty quickly and easily to kind of cut them up. Oh, but here comes a bunch of Banelings, took out our Zealots. And now you're going to see a different use for the force field. So this is just creating a wall, which now force the enemy units to have to come all the way around the wall. But the Protoss player has Stalkers, which can now point to the other side of the wall. So it's a really simple ability as far as kind of understanding it, but it has a lot of deep strategic potential depending on how you use the ability. All right, so the next unit is the Mothership. Now the Mothership is a very powerful unit, but not kind of in the traditional sense. As far as for its cost, it's not going to win battles by itself. It's really a very large support unit. It's not really a super unit as we've kind of shown in previous show and tells. We've kind of evolved the unit since then. So really now what the Mothership is all about is being a mobile battlefield teleport. Much kind of like the Arbiter in the original Starcraft with the recall ability, but being a much more durable unit that can instantly summon an army to it. And then it also has a protection spell called Time Bomb, which is going to also be illustrated in this next movie. So you can see the Mothership summoning its army right underneath it to respond to this attack. So the Mothership is, you can use it in a bunch of different ways. You can use it as almost like a Zerg Queen in a way, where it can hang out at your base and be able to kind of protect your base by summoning your army that's out in the field back to it. Or you can bring the Mothership out into battle and constantly just bring forces back from your base into the battle. So the Mothership, though, got ambushed here and was about to die, but then cast the big Time Bomb spell, which you can see all the missiles that are entering the Time Bomb area stop instantly, kind of Matrix style, which buys the Mothership valuable time. All right, on to the Terrans. So the Terrans, one of the big themes for the Terrans is guns, guns, and bigger guns. So one of the new units that we brought in is called the Jackal. The Jackal, in a lot of ways, you can almost look at as a really fast mobile fire bat. And it's a very fragile unit, but it's a fast unit. And because it kind of jets out those long flamethrowers you can kind of see in the screenshot there, it makes it a really interesting unit for how you position it. Because you really want to position it so that it takes out a whole bunch of enemies and its splash damage. And because it moves so fast, you can reposition it very quickly in the battlefield. So here's a bunch of Jackals just sitting on high ground chilling.
You got my attention. Yes.
And pretty much just makes it impossible for those Marines to take that hill.
Yes.
The Jackals are also is a very fast unit, so it can kind of run down after enemy units. And you can see them reposition so they can get more Marines within its line of fire. Next unit I'm going to show you is called the Thor. So the Thor is a very, very large ground unit of the Terrans. and it's a very large assault unit that comes out of the factory, and it's got two very powerful abilities. One is its anti-air flak cannons, which really make it a great support unit if you're doing a siege tank push, which you're going to see in this movie. But it also has a really cool ability called self-repair, which once a Thor dies, its wreckage stays on the battlefield. And as the controlling player, you can actually spend resources and rebuild it directly onto the battlefield, which again kind of makes a really interesting targeting choice for the enemy player, because if you take out someone's Thor and he still has other units there, do you take out the units that are currently attacking you, or do you finish off the Thor before it can repair itself? Siege attack by the Terrans, bringing the siege tanks to bear onto a Zerg base. And the Zerg's going to respond with a flock of Mutalisks, and you'll see how completely Thor deals with them. One of the Thors actually went down, so there's wreckage, but the Thor is rebuilding itself. Oh, there goes another Thor. So since the enemy player didn't take out the wreckage, both Thors were able to repair themselves, and we're back up to a full retinue of Thor. So those are all the units I'm going to show you, but I also wanted to kind of share with you a little bit of the stuff we're working on right now internally. So one of the big things that we're trying to get right with Starcraft 2 is the right ratio of macro versus micro gameplay. So micro gameplay is a lot of what I've been showing you, all the interesting units and the different ways you can use them in the battlefield. We really want the units to be simple. We kind of have this term called movers and shooters. We don't want to have the really complex units of Warcraft 3, which was really all about spells and heroes and very complicated units. With Starcraft 2, we want them to be simple, but we want there to be a lot of interesting strategies you can do, and that's kind of micro gameplay. The macro gameplay, is really more of your strategic gameplay in dealing with how are you going to resource, when are you going to expand, and kind of stuff like that. And one of the challenges has been, because we continue to always polish and iterate on the user interface and try to make a lot of the more tedious tasks easier to do, which kind of forces us then to come up with interesting and new mechanics to still keep that macro gameplay deep and interesting and kind of the right ratio against the micro gameplay. So another thing we're working on right now is the different upgrade systems in the game. Making sure that we have interesting upgrades that you can build for each of the races and each of the units. Obviously, I showed a lot of the newer special abilities, but that's a real big push right now, especially like I was showing you on the Protoss and the Zerg. Really trying to come up with the really interesting spells and abilities for the game, but Starcraft really isn't about that, so we kind of left that to last. We want to make sure we got all the simpler units, kind of the mover and shooter units done first, and now we're really focusing a lot more on kind of the spellcasters and the special abilities. And the other thing that we haven't talked a lot about publicly yet, and I'm not going to talk too much about it today, but we've been working a lot on BattleNet. We really want to make sure that when Starcraft 2 comes out on BattleNet, that it's as big a leap forward as Warcraft 3 was from the original Starcraft. We really added a whole lot of features with Warcraft 3 with BattleNet, and we still want BattleNet to be the premier gaming platform on the PC. So you can really expect to see a lot of cool things for Starcraft 2 as it pertains to BattleNet. And then the really big cool thing that we're spending a lot of time on right now is the story mode campaign. And it's something that I think last year at BlizzCon was the first time we really showed it publicly, and it's really come a long ways. We're working we have, I would say about a third of the campaign playable now, and we've really been working a lot on kind of the cinematics and the characters and the story structure itself. So I'm really hoping that maybe towards the end of the year I can show and speak a lot more about the story mode campaign. And our last movie is a big kind of typical battle royale, which is going to use a lot of the different abilities that I showed individually. Thank you very much for listening to the presentation on Starcraft 2, and now we'll take some questions.
So we'll have 2 lines for questions. We will have 1 line here on the right-hand side of the stage.
A single multiplayer game.
Quel sera le rôle des héros selon qu'on est en configuration monojoueur ou multijoueur?
So in StarCraft 2, we're really de-emphasizing heroes quite a bit. We really felt like that was something that we wanted to do with Warcraft 3. And even as early as when we made War 3, we knew when or if we came back to StarCraft 2, it was going to be an opportunity to really differentiate the 2 licenses that way. So we've kind of made Warcraft 3 more about the heroes. That said, though, there'll probably be some missions where you get to actually play, kind of the big name characters like Raynor. But, it's going to be a lot more selective than you might have seen in the original StarCraft. In the original StarCraft, you'd kind of hide Raynor in the back of your base and hope that someone didn't kill him. And we really don't want to have any missions like that. So they're mainly going to be in the story mode spaces. It's kind of like dialogue and story characters, and really not going to impact gameplay in a real serious way.
C'est un choix qu'on a fait pour la deuxième version de Starcraft.
Star map we just talked about. How do you tackle the design problem when you have multiple missions you can select from regarding the storyline itself?
Concernant ces cartes d'étoiles.
So there is a core storyline. There's a set beginning and ending that won't change. It's kind of like everything in the middle. It becomes the interesting choices. So what we really want to have happen is that if you play, the Terran campaign and then I play it, we're going to have the same ending, but we're going to have played a lot of different missions in each other, and there'll be a lot of subplots that will open up, and you'll probably do different subplots than I will, and you might also complete them very differently.
Zerg infestation ability is going to work on the Protoss.
J'imagine que la capacité d'infestation par les Zerg sera contre les Protoss.
Which ability are you referring to?
Building infestation model.
Vous parlez de quel domaine exactement? De l'infestation des constructions.
Yes, you are correct.
Oui, c'est exact.
Hi. Due to the complexity and detail of the game, I just want to know, with StarCraft 2, are you going to continue Blizzard's previous way of developing both for Apple, Mac and PC systems at the same time?
Bonjour, étant donné la complexité, le niveau de détail dans Starcraft, je voulais savoir si vous allez maintenir la politique de Blizzard, c'est-à-dire de développer aussi bien pour la plateforme Mac que pour la plateforme PC.
Yeah, we remain and continue to be big supporters of the map, so it's something that we're pretty committed to, and I think it's not as much anymore since the Macs are getting much more powerful, but I always felt like it was a great strategy for us to make sure that we kept our system requirements, lower and much more accessible. But you can expect that, for the foreseeable future, all of our PC games will also be on Macs.
Alors nous apportons toujours un grand soin à toujours...
Bonjour, je voulais savoir, les zèbres ont la reine, les protos sont le mothership, et est-ce que les Terrans disposeront eux aussi d'une unité unique?
Zergs have their queen, Protoss have the mothership. Will Terrans also have a unique unit of the same kind?
Actually, no, and the only unit that's unique in the way I think you're referring to it is actually the Queen. The mothership, we originally tried it as, you only can build one of them, but we've since gone away from that. So, and again, kind of going back to something I hit on in the presentation, we actively try to avoid doing that. If we put in kind of something interesting like that, like a unique unit, then we want to keep it within that race. So you really won't expect to see that appear in either of the other two races.
Non, d'ailleurs, pour être tout à fait rigoureux, il n'y a qu'une seule règle.
A few words about the Roach unit and what role is it supposed to have?
Est-ce que vous pourriez nous en dire un petit peu plus sur l'unité des cafards et quel est son rôle?
So the Roach unit is a unit that doesn't have a lot of hit points, but regenerates extremely fast. So that's really well suited to units that don't do a lot of damage. So like the units, like let's say a siege tank that does a lot of damage in one hit, that'd be a unit it would not be good against. So it's really kind of meant to be better at the lower end units like Marines and Zealots and the smaller units.
Bonjour, en fait dans la première version Protoss, la vidéo qui a été sur le net, on voyait que le vaisseau mère pouvait nous faire ça s'appelle un trou noir, c'est absorber tous les battle over et on ne voit plus. Donc j'aimerais savoir s'il est encore prévu ou pas.
Is the black hole still planned for the Protoss?
So that's an ability that we're hoping kind of ends up somewhere, but like I was mentioning in the presentation, originally it lived on the mothership, but we've kind of since changed the mothership quite a bit away from being an uber attack unit and more into a support unit. But I'd love to see that ability live somewhere and come back somewhere, but right now it's nowhere to be found.
Nous espérons que oui.
My question pertains both the AoE attacks that the Thor and the Terran battlecruiser had, and as of today, as I saw, they are both switched to anti-air area of effect instead of ground. Is there a possibility of either one regaining its former ground AoE attack again?
Ma question porte sur les...
There's certainly a possibility. I mean, they could get them back tomorrow and then lose them the day after. I mean, that's kind of the stage of the project we're in right now. So you never know. I mean, the Thor's been one of our more difficult units to find a role for. We always thought it looked great, and it's such a powerful, cool unit. But it's been pretty difficult trying to find a role for it that's very separate from the siege tank or separate from the battlecruiser. So I wouldn't be surprised if it gets 5 or 6 different abilities over the next few months as we're kind of trying to get up to beta.
Oui, c'est possible. Alors il est possible.
Before the Mermaid you were into training at the Reaper's there, but now it actually does nothing at all. It only enables you to build Reapers at your barracks. What's the design philosophy behind that change?
Can you repeat the first part of the question again?
Of course, it's regarding the Merc Haven. before you would buy Reapers there or train them. Currently, it does nothing at all. It just enables you to make Reapers at your barracks.
So that's the Merc Haven.
Est-ce que vous pourriez nous parler un petit peu plus du refuge des mercenaires au rôle de
Still Merc Haven. So I think we've come up with, I don't know, 5 or 6 different designs for that building, and never really came up with anything yet that we've fallen in love with. So I would probably guess that it's going to continue to change until we find something we like for that building, because it's a cool looking building, but we haven't figured out yet what's a fun gameplay for a Merc yet.
Donc, on a eu 5 ou 6 idées différentes, mais rien n'est
Units will come out from Protoss infested buildings.
Bonjour, j'aimerais savoir quelles unités ressortiront des bâtiments infestés par les Protoss.
Yeah, actually, I misspoke earlier. I actually misunderstood the question. As of now, they actually can't infest the Protoss buildings, but it is something that we've been talking about.
Alors j'ai peut-être mal répondu à la question auparavant. Pour l'instant, ils ne peuvent pas encore infester les bâtiments, mais on y pense, on y réfléchit.
Will the Ghost be able to have telekinesis or telepathic abilities like in the books and the manga?
Est-ce que les fantômes vont avoir des capacités télépathiques?
So the Ghost is one of the units that we're actually doing quite a bit of experimentation with these days. We've had quite a few different abilities on it, and a lot of the ideas for the abilities definitely come from the books, the manga, the project that we worked on. So there's probably a good chance you're going to see some of those abilities for sure.
Plusieurs idées différentes qui effectivement...
Will it be possible to play the storyline in co-op mode?
Est-ce que ce sera possible d'avoir une histoire ou une aventure en mode coopératif, en joueur, en groupe?
Unfortunately not. It's something that we have talked about quite a bit, but because of how much interaction that you have in the story mode kind of between the missions, it's kind of difficult to figure out how would someone cooperatively kind of do RPG type of gameplay, with talking to different characters, because when you're playing in story mode, you kind of are the main character. In the case of the Terran campaign, you're playing Jim Raynor, and there's really not an opportunity for someone else to play a different character in story mode.